Well, good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to translate the coronavirus information that is being presented by the medical professionals in Mexico. And I'm going to be translating it from Spanish to English. And you're welcome to text. I'll be watching and answering and, in the chat. So thank you very much for joining our channel today. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to lock this up and start. Good morning, cheer up.
Vamos a informar
We are going to inform
sobre el avance
regarding
en
the
el plan de salud,
advancements in the plan for health,
como lo hacemos todos los martes,
as we do every
pero
Tuesday. However,
como tenemos que estar dando información sobre el coronavirus, también vamos
but since we have to be giving information regarding the coronavirus,
esta mañana
this
a
morning,
hablar del tema,
we're going to talk about that topic,
que es muy importante la información.
because the information is very
Es
important.
parte de la campaña
It is part of the campaign
para enfrentar
to confront
la pandemia.
the pandemic.
Si hay desinformación,
If there is
hay rumores,
if there is misinformation and rumors,
hay pánico,
there's panic.
no se ayuda,
It doesn't
se
help.
afecta.
It affects.
Entonces, tenemos que estar todos informados.
Then we all have to be informed.
Y el plan que se ha venido aplicando en México
And the plan we've been applying
nos ha
in
dado
Mexico
resultados.
has given us results.
Va de acuerdo a lo que
It goes according
se
to
estimó
was
desde el
estimated
principio,
from
en
the
sus
beginning,
etapas,
in its
las
phases.
tres etapas.
That is, in its
Estamos todavía
phases.
en la primera etapa
We're still at the first
y
phase,
nos estamos preparando para la segunda
and
etapa,
we're
pero
preparing
no
for the
podemos
second phase.
adelantar vísperas.
But we can't get ahead of ourselves.
Debemos actuar
We need to
con
behave
serenidad
with serenity
y no dejarnos manipular.
and not allow ourselves to be
La
manipulated.
gente nos ayude en eso.
The people should help us with this.
Tenemos el apoyo de los ciudadanos, que eso es lo más importante, y
And
vamos
we
a
have the support of the
enfrentar
people, which is the most
esta
important. And we will
circunstancias
confront,
especiales, esta epidemia,
and we have these
¿Dónde está
special
nuestra
circumstances in this
Pues,
epidemic
en nuestro pueblo y en su cultura.
with our people and its
¿Qué no
cultures.
han resistido los mexicanos?
What have the Mexican
historia.
people not resisted
Todo.
in history? Everything.
Invasiones,
Invasions,
inundaciones, terremotos,
uh,
epidemias,
good Lord, earthquakes, epidemics,
gobiernos corruptos.
corrupt
Y
governments,
estamos de pie.
and we're still on our feet.
Lo mismo ahora.
And the same thing is happening now.
Vamos a salir adelante.
We're going to get
Hay
ahead.
que tener fe en nuestro pueblo.
The other one was floods. And we have faith in our people.
Actuar de manera
And we are going to
consciente.
behave in a conscientious
No
manner
caer en la desinformación.
and not fall
Entonces,
to
por eso,
disinformation.
Vamos a estar
And so for
todo el
this
tiempo,
reason,
o sea,
we
estar,
are always going to be
informando.
informing.
Aprovecho para
And I'm
comentarles
going to take advantage
que
to comment
voy a ir el fin de semana a Oaxaca
that on the weekend I'm going to Oaxaca
porque
because
el 21
on the 21st
es la conmemoración, la celebración del natalicio del mejor presidente
And it is the commemoration of the birth of the best president in history, Benito Juárez Garcia. And I just want to ask
los ciudadanos,
the citizens of Oaxaca, my friends, which we love very much,
que en esta ocasión
that on this occasion
me reúna solo con
I
los
meet
pobladores
only with
de Guelata,
the people of Galata,
que sea
and that
la
it be
ceremonia
a ceremony,
en Guelatao
and
y que ya va a haber
and
tiempo
that later we will have
para
time
visitarnos
to
en
visit
todos los pueblos.
with all the people.
Esto para
This in order
no dar pie
to
a
not
los cuestionamientos
give
de que el presidente
a footing to the questioning
no
that the
está
president
dando el ejemplo
is not giving a good
o
example
no se cuida,
or is not being cautious or
Todo
taking
esto,
care
¿no?
of himself. All of
que
this,
utilizan nuestros
which is utilized
adversarios.
by our adversaries.
Entonces hay que sacarles la vuelta,
So we need to get around that,
que no tengan
and let's not
ningún
give
motivo
them any motive
para
in order
estar,
to
eh,
prevent
atacándonos,
them from attacking us,
que se vean obligados a
that they
inventar,
find themselves obligated in order to invent things,
pero que nosotros no
but that
demos
we
motivo.
not give them
Entonces,
any
pedirle
motive.
eso
But I would
a,
like to ask that
nuestros amigos
to our
oaxaqueños,
friends from Oaxaca
21.
on the
También
21st. And
comentarles
also, I want to
que
comment that
mañana
tomorrow
es la conmemoración de la expropiación petrolera.
it is the commemoration of the expropriation of petroleum. And we are going to
El acto
have an act
en la torre de Pemex.
in the tower of Pemex.
También
And
con
also
poca participación,
with some
pero
participation,
no podemos
but we cannot
olvidar
forget
lo que significó
what it meant,
la expropiación petrolera.
the expropriation of petroleum in I think he said 68.
Más ahora que estamos
But more so now
rescatando.
that we are rescuing the petroleum.
Entonces también les
So
informo
therefore,
sobre eso.
I'm informing you on that.
Vamos a
And we
escuchar el
are
informe
going to
del
listen
doctor
to the information
Hugo López Gatell,
from the
al que le
Dr.
tenemos
Hugo
toda la
Lopez Cate,
confianza,
in whom we have all the
porque
confidence
es un especialista
because he is a
en
specialist
esta materia.
in this matter or material.
Sabe bastante,
He knows a lot.
tiene experiencia
He has
y
experience,
es una gente seria,
and he is a
honesta.
serious person,
responsable.
honest, responsible.
Entonces él nos va
So
a
he
informar
will inform us
del coronavirus y
regarding the
luego
coronavirus.
vamos a dar a
And
conocer
then we will let it be known
ya la campaña
that now the campaign
para enfrentar
to confront
el problema de las adicciones.
the problems of
Ya la
addictions,
campaña
then that campaign
más
that is most
directa
direct
para orientar y
in order
hacer
to
conciencia
orient
del
and give
daño que causan
conscience
las drogas.
to the damage that
Y vamos
drugs
a
cause.
Extender
And
esta
we are
campaña,
going
va a
to
ser
extend this campaign.
intensiva
This campaign will be intensive
porque
because
causa
it causes
muchas desgracias,
lots of disgraces with its consumption.
muchas,
Very many.
mucho dolor,
Lots of pain,
mucha tristeza,
lots of sadness,
sobre todo
especially
en los jóvenes, en
with
las
the
familias,
youth, their families,
y tenemos que
and we need
contrarrestar,
to counteract it.
toda la promoción que
All
se
the
hace
promotion that is being done
proyectando una
projecting an
imagen de que ese
image
mundo
that that
de
world
las drogas,
of drugs,
de la delincuencia,
of
es
delinquency,
un mundo feliz,
is a world of happiness,
un mundo de, lo hemos dicho, de los lujos,
of luxuries,
de las residencias,
of
de la
residences,
ropa de marca,
of
de las alhajas,
labeled brands and jewelry,
de la vida placentera,
of the pleasure,
cuando
life
es
of pleasure, when in actuality
un infierno,
it's an
la
inferno.
realidad.
That's the reality.
Hasta los
Even
delincuentes más famosos
the
tienen
most
que andar
famous
a
delinquents
salto de mata.
have to be
No tienen
watching out that
tranquilidad.
they're not going to be killed.
Eso no
They
es
have
vida.
no tranquility. That is not
Y
life.
Lo peor
And the worst part
es que
is that
hay drogas
there are drugs
que destruyen
that destroy
vidas
lives
en meses.
within months.
Drogas
Drugs
nocivas por completo.
that are nauseous,
Acaban con
nauseous,
los
noxious,
Entonces,
and
eso
they
lo tenemos que
finish
aprender.
with the lives of the youth. And
No
this
olvidarnos
we must not forget.
de
We need to have it ever present.
atender las causas
We need
que
to
originan
attend
la
to the
violencia
causes that are
y
causing
el
violence
sufrimiento en
and
los territorios
suffering
para lograr una sociedad
so that
mejor,
we can gain a better
una sociedad
society,
feliz. Entonces, son
a
las dos
society that is happy.
cosas que vamos a tratar.
Things
Y
that we're going
viene
to deal
el
with
doctor Hugo.
is what I was just telling you about. And
Muchas
so
gracias,
now,
presidente.
thank you, Mr. President.
Muy buenos días,
And a very
secretario,
good day,
directores,
Mr.
coordinador.
Secretary,
Muy buenos días, tengan todas y todos ustedes.
secretaries, all of you.
Vamos a retomar
We are going to
sobre el
take
informe técnico
the
que damos
technical
todos los días,
information that we give
publicación de
every
dos veces al
day,
día.
about 2
Me
times a day.
gustaría
And today,
respetuosamente
I would
convocar
like
su
to
atención a
invoke
los
your
aspectos técnicos de este
attention to the technical information of this
informe y no
information.
distraerse con interpretaciones de otra naturaleza.
And so that we won't have interpretations of another nature. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to set something up here. Okay. And there we go. All right. And let's go.
La responsabilidad
The
y el compromiso que hemos
responsibility
adquirido
and the commitment we have
eh,
acquired
con el presidente de la
with the
República, con el
President
secretario
of
de
the
Salud y
Republic
con todo el país
and with the whole
es
country
informar
is
verazmente
to inform
cada una de las cosas
very
que van ocurriendo, cada una de las cosas
with lots of veracity all the things that are happening every day
que anticipamos van a ocurrir
and
y
that we
cada una de las
anticipate
cosas que
are
hemos
going to
planeado,
happen, and every one of the things that we have planned
empezando el 3 de enero para
that started on the 3rd of January
lo que va a ocurrir.
for what is going to
Si
occur.
a lo largo de nuestra exposición
If at the end of our exposition
resulta que los temas que presentamos,
it results that the topics that we presented,
las medidas de precaución, de prevención, de
the measures of prevention and precautions
control
and
que
control
explicamos,
that we have explained,
su fundamento, su
It's-
razón,
its foundation, its reason,
su base científica,
its scientific basis,
se desvirtúan
if it is if it has lost its virtue
porque se intenta llevar este tema
because someone attempts to take this topic or matter
a la esfera política,
to the political
no
sphere,
es benéfico para la sociedad.
it is not
Y
beneficial
esto
for
lo digo
society.
porque desde un inicio
And this I say because from its initiation,
hicimos el empeño de mantener esto en la atención pública como un asunto
because we made an effort to keep this at the foremost of the people's or public's attention
de carácter profesional de carácter técnico
with a professional and a technical character,
en el que se requieren acciones
in which we are required to have actions
por parte del gobierno,
on the behalf of the government,
pero por parte de la comunidad.
but on the behalf of the community.
Y la comunidad, la sociedad, está
And the community, the society,
formada por diversas instituciones,
is formed by diverse institutions
diversas organizaciones
and diverse organizations
del sector público,
of the public sector,
de los gobiernos,
of the governments,
del sector social
of the social sector,
y del sector privado,
and of the private sector.
y todas estas organizaciones
And all of these organizations
tienen un papel que jugar.
have a role to play.
Y uno de los papeles que tienen que jugar o que pueden jugar
And one of these roles that they have to play or can play,
y que ojalá decidan de manera clara
and that we hope they will decide in a very clear way
y de manera consistente
and in a consistent manner
actuar
to
es
behave,
en mantener la serenidad,
is to
mantener el
maintain
orden,
the serenity, maintain the order,
mantener la comunicación
to
y
maintain the
mantener
communication,
atención a los aspectos
and to maintain attention to the aspects
técnicos
Technical.
que se requieren para responder.
that are required to
Si esto no ocurre
respond.
así,
But if it does not
empieza a haber
occur
una
this
gran
way,
confusión
there
que permea
begins to
hacia
be
la
a
ciudadanía.
great confusion
mundo-
which permeates up to society. This morning I want to say hello to Beatriz García. Buenos días, gracias por estar aquí. Y Señora de los Cielos, and Raúl Martínez. Thank you very much.
Entero, las epidemias, como cualquier fenómeno masivo,
This epidemics in a massive proportion,
colectivo,
collectively,
empieza a generar gran ansiedad.
begins to generate great anxiety.
Esto hemos dicho, incluso con una base también científica, también técnica,
And this has to do with a basis also scientifically
está plenamente estudiado
that is plainly and fully studied
como un fenómeno que suele acompañar
as a phenomenon that is bound to be accompanied by
a las epidemias
epidemics
de enfermedades infecciosas.
of infectious diseases.
Porque la incertidumbre,
Because the uncertainty,
la percepción
the perception
de una amenaza
of a threat
se empieza a acelerar,
begins to accelerate.
se empieza a multiplicar
It begins to multiply.
en la medida en que las personas
And the measure to which people
pueden sentirse desamparadas, pueden sentirse
begin to feel unaccompanied, begin to feel
sin
alone,
el control
without
de
control
las cosas.
of things.
Pero
However,
cuando tenemos la oportunidad,
when we
como
have
hoy la
the
tiene
opportunity,
México,
like
como la ha
now
tenido
Mexico has, and the way
México desde que esta epidemia
Mexico has had since the beginning of this epidemic
empezó en Wuhan, China,
in Wuhan, China,
con un pequeño brote de 44
with a small outbreak of 44
casos de neumonía
of cases of pneumonia
en un mercado de animales.
in a market of animals.
La oportunidad ha sido
The opportunity has been
el poder identificar
in the power to identify
con evidencia científica, con datos
with scientific evidence, with data
creíbles,
that are credible,
que en su mayoría
that in its majority
integra y recaba la Organización Mundial de la Salud,
that is integrated by the World Organization of Health
en uso de sus funciones, de sus atribuciones,
in the use of its functions and its attributions,
de su mandato legal,
which is a legal mandate.
nos han permitido
They have permitted us
ir identificando las fases
and identifying the phases
de progresión,
of progression.
nos han permitido identificar
They have permitted us to identify
cómo funciona este virus
how this virus functions
al interior del cuerpo humano,
within the human body,
cómo funciona este virus
how this virus functions
para poder transmitirse
in order to transmit itself
por los mecanismos que se han explicado
via the mechanisms which have been explained
una y otra vez,
one time and again,
por la vía respiratoria,
via the respiratory way,
por gotas de saliva,
via drops of saliva,
por aerosoles de
via aerosols,
secreciones de líquidos que están en la nariz,
secretions,
en la
liquids
garganta,
which are in the nose and throat
en la tráquea.
and in the trachea.
Y nos ha permitido también
And it has
entender
also
las
permitted us
distintas
to
fases
understand
o
the different
escenarios
phases
que
or
pueden,
scenes
transitar en
that
el curso
can
de esta epidemia.
happen
Me
during
gustaría
this
volvernos
epidemic.
a decir
And I would like to say these again. And here for a moment, I'm going to take a moment to say, Raul Martinez says, hello, buenos dias, Mara. Don't you think, Mara, that this has to do the real truth with the recession in the whole world's biggest economic fight? Who's going to take leadership? Actually, I do believe you're correct. I do believe that this has to do, in the cases of many countries, including the United States, where I'm at, I'm in California. I do believe that it has to do with economic struggles and people trying to become financially more potent than the others. And I do believe that it is being used unscrupulously by governments to take the funds that would be used in a case of an emergency, which are usually set aside for that purpose, and use them to their for their own purposes. That is just my opinion. And also, I think sometimes they do it to save face, as in, to try and look good. But I do agree with that. And hello, Constanza. And she says excellent work. And it's very good information for all bilingually. Thank you, Constanza. And thank you, Raul, for your take on this. Let's get back to the translation.
el escenario 1
And
es un
in-
escenario de entrada, de importación del virus.
And in scene one, we talk about the entrance, the importation of the virus.
En un país dado, y esto
And in a given country,
ha ocurrido en todos y cada uno de los 174 países
and this has happened in all of the 174 countries
que han tenido ya al menos un caso,
that have had at least one case.
hay una fase en la que el virus entra.
There is a phase in which the virus enters.
¿Cómo entra este virus? No
And-
perdamos
And how does this virus enter? Let's not lose
de vista.
sight of this.
Entra porque hay personas que están infectadas,
It enters because there are people that are infected
que están durante el periodo de contagio,
that are together during the period of contagiousness,
que suele ser más intenso, una vez que empiezan los síntomas,
seems to be more intense once the symptoms have begun,
pero que también se ha reconocido
but that has also been
que
recognized
durante algunos pocos días antes del
that
inicio de los
within a
síntomas
few
puede
days
haber
after
también contagio.
the
Si estas
initiation of
personas
symptoms,
entran
you can also have contagiousness.
por distintas vías,
And these also enter via different ways
de llegada a un país.
of
Y
entering
esas
in a
vías
country. And
son
these
no
vías
una sola puerta de entrada
are
y no
not
son
simply
solamente
one
unos
way of
pocos
entering, but it's not just a few ways
individuos.
or a few individuals.
Estamos hablando de millones,
We are talking about millions,
no miles, ni decenas, ni centenas,
not dozens, hundreds, or thousands.
millones
Millions
de personas que
of
van de un sitio a otro.
people that go from one place to another.
Hay regiones del mundo,
There are regions of the world,
en particular la región europea,
in particular the European region,
que no tienen ni siquiera fronteras físicas.
that doesn't even have physical barriers.
Es como si fuera, para fines prácticos,
It's as if it were, for practical ends,
relativos a este fenómeno,
relative to this phenomenon,
un solo país.
one
Y
country.
aunque tienen identidades
But even though they have identities
políticas
politically
que los hacen estados nacionales,
that make them separate national states,
en términos geográficos,
in geographical terms,
funciona como un solo país.
they function as one country.
¿Por qué digo esto?
And why do I say this?
Porque desde el inicio de la epidemia
Because since the initiation of this epidemic,
y en mucho como parte de esta reacción
and in a lot as part of this reaction,
de temor,
of
esta
fear,
reacción
this reaction
de respuesta de
of response
ansiedad ante la incertidumbre,
and anxiety against this uncertainty,
se ha tenido la expectativa
we have had the view
de que uno de los mecanismos
that one of the mechanisms
posibles
that is possible
para controlar
in order to control
la transmisión del virus
the
pudiera
transmission
ser
of the
el
virus
cerrar las fronteras,
could be to close the
pudiera
barriers
ser el
or
impedir el
borders,
trasiego de personas o el trasiego de bienes,
or it could be to stop the transference or movement of people and objects or goods,
través de
merchandise,
los países, ya sea por
between
vía
countries,
aérea, por
whether it be via air,
vía terrestre o por
via land,
vía marítima.
or via marine sources.
Esto no es posible
This is not possible
sin causar un daño de consecuencias
without causing damages of consequences
imprevisibles, posiblemente descomunales,
which are unforeseen and possibly incommunicable
a las sociedades.
to society.
Porque en el momento en que no se
Because from the moment
permite la movilidad
that you do not permit mobility
de las personas,
of people,
se paraliza
you
la
paralyze society.
sociedad. Y al paralizarse la sociedad,
And as you paralyze
amenaza
the society,
la posibilidad de tener
then you also paralyze the possibility of having
insumos.
insumos. Okay, so let's see what insumos are. That's the word I knew I was going to need to translate. Give me just a second. Insumos. I'm not really sure how to translate that word. Supplies. Okay, so insumos are supplies
Para la vida diaria,
for daily life.
comida,
food,
ropa,
clothing,
herramientas,
uh,
insumos de salud,
that's materials, uh, objects, things for well-being and health supplies,
entre muchísimos otros.
among other
Y es
things,
por
many
esto
other things. And for
que
this
desde hace
reason,
mucho tiempo,
and it has been a
desde los
very
años
long time,
90,
since the
la
1990s,
Organización Mundial de la Salud,
the
con
Worldwide
el
Health
respaldo de la comunidad
Organization,
global,
with the global backing,
incluso del Foro Máximo de Concertación
including the maximum forum of concentration,
Política Global, la
politically and global,
Organización de las Naciones Unidas,
from the United Nations,
planteó los principios rectores del reglamento sanitario
proposed the principal barriers or the principal plan
internacional.
for the international care.
Y uno de ellos,
And one
desde
of
mi
them,
punto de vista, el central,
from my point of view, it's the central or key point.
es que las medidas
It
de
is
protección, de prevención,
that the measures of protection, prevention,
de control
and
de
control
epidemias
of epidemics
deben hacerse
needs to be
de
done
acuerdo a el riesgo,
according to the risk,
tanto en términos de la magnitud, en términos del tamaño del peligro,
not only in the realm of its danger,
como en términos de
but also in
los
terms
mecanismos
of
o los
the
mecanismos que
mechanisms
permiten
that
enfrentar.
permit
Y de
us to
manera
confront
específica,
it,
el Reglamento Sanitario Internacional
and that in a specific way the rules of international health
vigente señala
that is now current signals
que esto debe hacerse
that,
procurando no interferir
that this needs to be done in a way that you do not interfere
con la movilidad de las personas
with the movement of people
y el comercio internacionales.
and international commerce.
Y esto no es ni un capricho,
And this is not us being capricious,
ni un elemento que no haya sido revisado.
nor an element that has not been reviewed or studied.
Al contrario,
On the
es algo que
contrary,
fue exhaustivamente revisado
it is something that has been exhaustively reviewed
durante los casi 10 años
over the last almost 10 years
que duró el proceso de
that the process took
reflexión y aprobación
for reflection and approval
del Reglamento Sanitario Internacional.
of the international ruling for health.
En este momento,
At this moment,
pareciera que el mundo ha entrado en una fase
it would appear that the world has entered into a phase
de enorme desconcierto.
of a normal disconcertion
Desconcierto de la sociedad,
or enormous disconcertion of society,
desconcierto de sus liderazgos políticos,
disconcertion regarding its freedoms of politics.
y se están tomando diversas decisiones
And they are making diverse decisions
que si uno hace un análisis cuidadoso y
that if you make a cautious analysis,
frío, se da cuenta que guardan poca relación
you will see that it takes very little into relation
con reflexiones de sus comunidades científicas y técnicas.
with its communities of scientists and technical means.
Instituciones
Institutions
que han gozado por muchos años, por décadas,
that have enjoyed for many years, for decades,
de prestigio internacional
of international prestige
y también nacional,
and also national,
en Europa, en Estados Unidos, en
in Europe, in the United States,
Canadá,
in Canada,
en Australia,
in Australia,
en Nueva Zelanda,
in New Zealand,
por mencionar solo algunas regiones, en
just to mention a few regions,
América Latina también,
and also in Latin America,
parecieran hoy sucumbir
today appear to have succumbed
a la presión
to the pressure
de esta dinámica sociopolítica
of this socio political dynamic
sin que uno encuentre,
without us being able to find,
a pesar de búsqueda directa
even though we search directly
y exhaustiva,
and exhaustedly,
una reflexión organizada
a organized reflection
entre la apreciación
within the appreciation
basada en evidencia
that is based on evidence
del fenómeno
of the phenomenon
y las decisiones políticas
and the political decisions
al respecto que finalmente se toman.
that are respectively finally taken.
Cierro con esta idea
I close with this idea,
señalando,
signaling
tenemos todavía la oportunidad
that we still have the opportunity
de tomar decisiones organizadas.
of making organized decisions.
Tenemos todavía la oportunidad
We still have the opportunity
de implantar los distintos elementos del repertorio de
of implanting the different repertories of the
intervenciones,
interventions,
de contención,
of
de
contention,
mitigación,
of mitigation,
de escalamiento
of
hospitalario,
scaling in
de
hospitals,
reorganización de
reorganization
los servicios
of
de salud,
services of
de
health,
comunicación de riesgos,
of communication of risks,
de higiene básica
of basic hygiene
que nos permitan contender en México
that will permit us to contend in Mexico
con las siguientes fases.
with the following phases.
Y cierro mencionando las fases:
And I close mentioning the phases
importación viral,
of importation of virus,
en donde hay unas decenas de casos
where there's dozens of cases
que pueden llegar a transmitir
that are able to transmit
hasta la primera generación de contacto,
up to the first generation of contact,
el caso importado a su primer contacto,
from the imported case to its first contact.
escenario 2,
And in scene number 2,
transmisión comunitaria,
community transmission,
donde ya hay transmisión de un primer contacto
where there is now the transmission between one first contact to
al siguiente contacto
the following contact,
y varios otros en sucesivas
and various others in successive
cadenas de transmisión,
chains or links of transmission.
pero todavía se presenta en centenas de casos
But it still is presented in hundreds of cases
en forma parchada,
in a parched or patched form,
geográficamente en pequeños grupos.
geographically speaking, in small groups.
Y finalmente,
And finally,
transmisión diseminada
disseminated transmission
o epidémica,
or epidemic,
en donde ya no es posible tener
where it is no longer possible to have
la trazabilidad, el seguimiento de las cadenas de transmisión,
to find the forms of transmission or to follow the route of transmission.
y ya hay una afección en varias regiones
And now there is affection or various regions being affected
simultáneamente
simultaneously
del país.
in the country.
En esos momentos, en
And in those moments,
particular,
in particular,
en el escenario 2,
and in scene number 2,
tardío,
which is lated or belated.
Escenario 3,
Into scene 3,
el reto principal
the principal goal,
el reto principal, no que el único,
not the only goal, but the principal one,
pero el principal es lograr atender a todas las personas
is to be able to gain the attention to all the people
que requieran una asistencia médica avanzada,
that require advanced medical attention,
específicamente hospitalización
specifically hospitalization,
y posiblemente respiración
and possibly respiration assisted,
asistida, ventilación mecánica asistida,
mechanical ventilation,
como se conoce médicamente,
as it is known medically speaking,
y no que se saturen las
and not that it be saturated
unidades de salud
with the units of health,
con el volumen muchísimo mayor
with the volume that is vastly larger,
que representan el 80% de
that represent 80% of
las infecciones
the infections
que se van a curar
that are going to be cured
espontáneamente
spontaneously
por efecto del sistema inmune.
due to our immune system.
Lo que vemos en varios de los países que ahorita enfrentan
What we are seeing in many of the countries that are now confronting
el momento más importante de la epidemia,
the most important moment of the epidemic,
específicamente la región de Europa Occidental,
specifically the region of Occidental Europe,
es que aquellos lugares donde hay saturación
is that in those places where it is saturated or there is saturation,
depende en mucho
depend very much
de la sobredemanda
on the over or excessive demand
que representa el volumen más grande de pacientes.
that is represented by the larger volume of patients,
Los que tienen síntomas leves
those that have mild symptoms
y que podrían mantenerse en una observación
that could be maintained with observation
indirecta a
indirectly
distancia en
at a distance
sus domicilios
at their own domiciles or homes
sin necesidad de acudir a
without the need to go to
las unidades de salud.
healthcare organizations or places,
Y quienes sí tienen la necesidad
and that these that do have the necessity
de ser evaluados
of being evaluated
y de ser cuidados de manera específica,
and the need to be cared for in a specific manner,
que son las personas adultas mayores,
and these are the adult older persons,
deberían tener los espacios en las consultas
and they should have these spaces in the consultation areas
en los servicios de urgencias
and in the urgent services area,
y por supuesto en los hospitales
and of course in the hospitals,
para ser atendidos.
so that they can be attended to.
Y estos representan un porcentaje
And these represent a percentage
muy significativamente menor,
that is significantly smaller,
acaso el 5%
and that's perhaps at most 5%
de las personas que presenten enfermedad.
of the people that will present with illness.
Ojo,
Put your eye on this.
no el 5% de la población,
Not 5% of the population,
no el 5% de la población,
not 5% of the population.
el 5% de las personas sintomáticas.
It's only 5% of the symptomatic people.
Quería dar esta panorámica
I wanted to give this panoramic view to you
porque ayer me dio la impresión
because yesterday I got the impression
de que las distintas reacciones
that the different reactions
públicas, sobre todo de medios,
publicly especially that of the media.
Involucraron dos elementos que me gustaría ser explícitos.
It involved two elements with which I would like to be explicit,
apelando a que estos elementos no se contaminen
and appealing to you that you not contaminate these elements
uno hacia el otro.
one with the other.
El primer elemento
The first element
me parece que es una perspectiva de ciertas posiciones que desde el inicio
And I believe one perspective is that of perspectives that have appeared since the initiation,
están planteadas sobre la agenda política
and they have planted themselves over the political agenda,
y que parecieran no tener disposición alguna
and they do not appear to have any disposition
de sumarse a la causa
to adhere or join with the cause
del interés superior de esta nación,
of the superior interest of this nation,
que es mantener el orden,
which is to maintain order,
mantener el orden al interior del Estado Nacional
to maintain the order of the national state,
y permear información útil
and to permeate with useful information
que permita tomar decisiones
that permits you to make decisions
con una base verídica de información.
with a verified fountain of information.
Sin embargo, me preocupa ver
But even so, it preoccupies me to see, or worries me to see,
que también se sumaron distintas voces
that also several voices joined in,
muy legítimas,
very legitimate,
muy creíbles,
very credible,
muy autorizadas,
very authorized,
muy respetables,
very respectable,
que posiblemente motivadas por
that were possibly motivated by
esta sensación de incertidumbre, esta sensación
this sensation of uncertainty,
de ansiedad
of anxiety,
natural y
which is natural
absolutamente entendible,
and absolutely understandable,
predecible y
which is predictable
legítima,
and legitimate.
hicieron juego de esa perspectiva.
They played on that perspective.
Entonces, el compromiso es, vamos a centrarnos
So our commitment is to center ourselves
en lo técnico,
on the technical,
la confianza que me han depositado las más altas autoridades
the confidence that has been granted to me by the highest authorities
nacionales y de salud
internationally and that of health
en conducir técnicamente esta epidemia
in conducting technically this epidemic
estriba precisamente en la responsabilidad de que
is based particularly in the opportunity
se me vea como un funcionario técnico, que es
that you can see me as a technical functionary person,
lo que soy,
which is what I am,
y no se me trate de llevar a la esfera política.
and not to try to take me to a political sphere,
La cual no me interesa
which I am not interested in,
ni tengo ningún papel que jugar en eso.
and I have no role to play in that.
Vamos a presentar de manera concreta
We are going to be presenting in a concrete manner
la situación, si nos pasan el primer mapa.
the situation. If you would pass us the first map.
Este mapa, como lo saben, pero lo digo también todos los días,
And this map, as you know, but I say it and repeat it every day,
no lo elaboramos en México, lo
was not created or elaborated in Mexico,
elabora la Organización Mundial de la Salud
but is created by the Worldwide Health Organization,
y lo presenta con el resumen de la información
and they present it with the resumption of the information
de todo el mundo.
of all the world. So what they're saying is This picture here is presented by the World Health Organization, and you can see the areas that have where the virus has been dispersed. But it's also important to note that Mexico, this little gold area right here, doesn't have any, well, it has very little red in it. So that's important to note. And also, I'm going to take this moment since I've paused to say thank you to Beatriz Garcia for helping out with saying hello to people because it's hard for me to translate and also type and say hello. But I'm going to say hello. And thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe and tell people about it, about my channel, that need to see the information in English and in Spanish. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go on.
Y lo que podemos apreciar,
And
y lo
what,
seguimos poniendo por
and what we can appreciate and we are exposing
transparencia en
with transparency
el lado izquierdo, el derecho de la diapositiva,
on the right side of the slide or graph
es el número de casos acumulados.
is the cumulative number of cases.
Pero siempre nos gusta que vuelvan a reflexionar
But we also would like to be able to have you reflect
sobre lo que significa ese número.
what that number actually signifies.
Vemos ahí que se han acumulado 167.500
You can see there that we have accumulated 167,506
personas que en
people
algún momento tuvieron la enfermedad COVID
that at one moment had gotten the infirmity or illness
la enfermedad por el nuevo coronavirus 2019.
with the new coronavirus of 2019.
Y esa cantidad de personas
And that quantity of persons
va a ir creciendo todos los días.
will continue to grow every day.
En la medida en que estamos viendo la historia de una epidemia desde su
And as we are taking measures and looking at the story or history of this epidemic,
inicio,
since its initiation,
conforme va ocurriendo.
as it is occurring.
Pero todas y todos debemos tener absolutamente claro
But every one of us should have it absolutely clear
que no quiere decir que en un momento dado del tiempo
that will not mean that at a given moment in time,
esas personas están activamente infectadas
does not mean that these people are actively infected
o que están contagiando.
or that they are being contagions.
La fuerza del contagio, el volumen de personas,
The force of the contagion, the volume of the persons,
el número de personas afectadas,
the number of persons affected.
es solamente quienes en los últimos 14 días
It is only those that within the last 14 days
han presentado la enfermedad.
have presented with the disease or condition.
Porque en 85% de las personas
Because in 80 to 85% of the people
que pasan esos 10 a 14 días
that pass within those 10 to 14 days,
dejan de ser contagiosas
they stop being contagious
y además se recuperan de manera íntegra
and they completely become recovered or recuperate intimately
sin secuelas y pasan a ser el grupo
without symptoms and join and become part of the group.
de personas con inmunidad,
And they become people that now have immunity.
de personas que ya no se pueden contagiar.
And they become people that can no longer become uh, or get the disease or get the contagion.
Y ese número se
And that number,
convierte, por lo tanto, en una excelente noticia,
that converts into excellent news.
porque no habiendo afectado de manera significativa a las personas,
Because not having affected significantly a number of people,
se vuelven el mecanismo principal de contención de la epidemia.
they become the principal number that will contain the epidemic.
Cuanto más crezca el número acumulado
The more the number of accumulation grows,
de personas que se recuperaron,
of people that have recovered,
más cercanos estamos del punto en el que ya no habrá transmisión
then we are closer to the point where there will no longer be transmission,
y la epidemia se agotará
and the epidemic will have ended
con una recuperación completa para el
with a complete recovery
mundo.
for the
La
world.
cifra que está abajo es
The cipher you see below, or the number you see below,
el número muy desafortunado
is the number that is very unfortunate
de 6,000 personas
of 6,000 people
que han fallecido.
that have died.
Ahora, de manera muy concreta, lo podemos hacer y lo hemos hecho y lo vemos todos los días.
And in a very concrete way, we can do it, and we have seen it every day
Para cada uno de los países y lo traeremos muy próximamente.
for every country, and we will bring it within the next few minutes. I'm going to take my picture off so that it won't block the view.
Podemos ver también
We can see also
qué magnitud hay de esta epidemia y compararla, como hacía el compañero ayer, con
And we can see the magnitude of this epidemic as our companion did yesterday
otros fenómenos de salud.
with other factors of health.
Entonces tenemos esta cifra
So we have this number, or this cipher,
de 167,000 personas
of 167,000 people
acumuladas
that have accumulated
en un mundo que tiene más de 7,000 millones de habitantes.
in a world that has then more than 7,000 million inhabitants.
Es un número muy grueso, por eso lo tenemos también para cada uno de los países.
And it is a very large number. That is why we have it for each of the countries.
Y podemos ver que en cada uno de los países
And we can see that in every one of the countries,
esta epidemia
this epidemic
no representa más de 0,001%
does not represent more than 0.001%
de la población del país.
of the population of that country.
Y esto no quiere decir menospreciar
And that is not to make it lessened, that is the importance,
las implicaciones de esta epidemia,
the implications of this epidemic,
pero sí ponerla en su justa dimensión.
but yes, to put it in its just dimension.
La siguiente es el mapa de México,
And the following is the map of Mexico,
donde vemos que hasta el momento tenemos 82 casos confirmados,
As you can see, we have 82 confirmed cases.
y estos casos confirmados derivan de haber sido reportados inicialmente. Este es el corte de ayer, por cierto, ya lo habían visto.
And these cases derive from being notified as we did. You can see this is the slide from yesterday.
Esto algunos de ustedes y saben que lo hacemos todos los días.
And some of you have already seen this, but we do show this every day.
Pero haber analizado y estudiado directamente
But we have analyzed and studied directly
a 500, casi 580 personas,
500, nearly 580 people,
más las 171 que hasta ayer estaban en estudio.
and also 171 that were being evaluated yesterday.
Entonces tenemos casi 700, un poco más de 750 personas
So we have about 700 or nearly 750 people
que han sido estudiadas
that have been evaluated
como sospechosos.
as suspicious.
Quien es sospechoso y se le hace la prueba,
Those are who are suspicious, and we do a test.
pasa a la categoría de caso descartado.
Then they go into the uh, row of cases that are discarded,
Porque la explicación de sus síntomas es
because the explanation of their symptoms
otra enfermedad. Pero además
is another condition. And besides that,
tenemos los estudios
We
de,
have-
en la siguiente diapositiva
we have the studies on the following slide
de los contactos,
of the contacts
que también son estudiados y son evaluados y
that are also studied and evaluated,
están en un periodo de observación
that are now in a period of observation,
y que ya suman más de 370 contactos. Es decir,
and now you see more than 370 contacts.
en suma tenemos cerca de 1.100 personas que han sido evaluadas
And we have nearly 1,100 people that have been evaluated,
ya sea por sospecha directa o por ser contactos.
either because they were suspicious or because they had personal contact.
Y aquí lo que vemos es que de los contactos confirmados,
And here what you can see is of the contacts that were confirmed,
son sintomáticos el 10%
only 10% are symptomatic
y el 90% son asintomáticos.
and 90% are asymptomatic.
Y todos ellos,
And all of them,
los contactos,
the contacts,
se ponen en aislamiento.
are put in isolation,
Todos.
all of them.
Y ese es exactamente el mecanismo de contención
And that is exactly the mechanism of containment
centrada en los casos que
that is centered and the cases.
ayer, por cierto, el director de la Organización Mundial de la Salud
And for certainty, the director of the Organization of World Health,
el doctor Tedros Ghebreyesus,
the Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus,
explicaba de manera específica
explained in a specific manner,
también para México
and also for Mexico,
a la pregunta dirigida
to the question that was directed
de una periodista
by a journalist
que le preguntaba cuáles son las recomendaciones específicas para
that asked what were the specific recommendations for Mexico.
México y su respuesta,
And his response,
junto con la doctora María Van Kerkhove,
along with the Dr. Maria van Kerkhove,
fue las mismas que para todo el mundo. Las mismas que para todo el mundo.
was the same as for the rest of the world. That was their response, the same as for the rest of the world.
Me parece que esta es la última
And it appears to me that this is the last one.
y le voy a la siguiente, por favor.
He said the following one next.
Les voy a compartir esta noticia que nos
I am going to share with you this news,
parece positiva
which appears to us to be positive,
y que ha sido también motivo de preguntas,
which has also been a motive for questions,
que es cuánto se va a destinar para
which is how much is going to be set aside or destined
contender con esta epidemia y
to
hemos
contend
comentado
with this
que
epidemic.
anticiparíamos
And we have commented that we have anticipated
una cifra de casi 3.500 millones de pesos
of approximately 3,500 million pesos
pesos en los distintos insumos.
in the different areas.
Y esto también nos permite poner en perspectiva
And this also allows us to put into perspective
la necesidad.
the need.
La necesidad fue calculada
The need
con una
was
base
calculated
técnica y con
with a technical basis
colaboración de todos los que están involucrados
and collaboration of all of them that are involved
en la coordinación de esto.
in the coordination of this.
¿Quiénes son esos todos?
And who are all these people?
Y lo menciono también
And I also mention it
porque esto es importante.
because this is important.
Contender con una epidemia requiere la participación
To contend with an epidemic requires the participation
de todo el Estado,
of the whole state,
es decir,
that is to say,
de todo el gobierno
of the whole government
y de toda la sociedad.
and of all the society.
Ese es un principio fundamental que se
That is a fundamental principle
conoce desde hace muchos años
that is well known for many years
para tener una respuesta efectiva.
in order to have an effective response.
En México está involucrado todo
And in Mexico, the whole something is involved.
el gobierno federal,
The whole federal government is involved.
todo,
The whole
desde su
government,
presidente
from its president
hasta las últimas organizaciones
up to the final organizations
que pueden existir en la administración pública federal.
that can exist in the federal administration.
Por supuesto, pasando por la Secretaría de Salud, quien coordina,
And of course, you have to go through the Secretary of Health, which coordinates
y los distintos organismos que participan
the different organizations which participate
en la respuesta.
in the response.
También los gobiernos estatales,
Also, the government organizations, state organizations,
y como hemos anunciado, lo anunciamos en el momento real que ocurrió,
and as we have announced, and we announced at the actual moment that it occurred,
la Conferencia Nacional de Gobernadores
the National Conference of Governors
jugó un papel muy importante
played a very important role
porque puso al servicio
because they put at its service
de esta preparación y respuesta
of this preparation and response
su disposición de comandar los estados, los propios gobiernos estatales son reconocidos
its disposition to dispose the governments
por la Ley General de Salud como autoridades sanitarias y
and put them as authorities of health,
pusieron de consenso la disposición de actuar
and they put as a consensus the disposition to behave or act
en lo que ellos mismos
in that which they themselves,
llamaron un escenario de neutralidad política.
an essence of neutral politics.
Es decir, gobernadores,
That is to say, governors
las dos gobernadoras,
and two governesses
con distintas perspectivas políticas,
with different political perspectives
decidieron que la política no está involucrada en la toma de decisiones.
they decided that politics should not be involved or was not involved in the making of these decisions.
Todos y todas actúan de común acuerdo y al unísono con el gobierno federal.
And they all behaved in agreement with the federal government.
Y en la sociedad hemos tenido innumerables encuentros y acuerdos
And in society, we have had numerous agreements and meetings
con organizaciones sociales
with social organizations,
y con organizaciones privadas
and with
para
private
buscar que la respuesta
organizations
sea
to search that the response be
articulada y concertada.
articulated and concerted.
Lo que se ha visto de las distintas acciones a veces guarda
What we have seen with the different actions at times holds
cierta variabilidad en
certain variability
el calendario de implantación,
in the calendar of implantation,
pero no quiere decir que no surgió de un acuerdo
but it does not mean that it did not surge from an agreement
marco de la operación general. Y lo pongo como
that is framed or in the mark of a general operation.
ejemplo el tema de las escuelas,
And I put as an example the marks of schools and education.
el Consejo Nacional Educativo, que es el órgano de coordinación
The National Education Council, which is the organization for control
de las 32 autoridades educativas,
of the 32 organizations of education,
convocado por el secretario de Educación Pública y en el que participamos
which has been evoked by the Organization of Public Organization
como Secretaría de Salud y
and the Secretary of Health, or as Secretary of Health,
institución coordinadora de la respuesta,
and institutional coordinator of the response.
concertamos las medidas que
We concerted the measures
se van a tomar para las escuelas.
which are going to be taken for the schools.
Sin embargo, algunos gobiernos estatales
But even so, or nonetheless, some state governments,
por distintos cálculos de la dinámica
due to different calculations of the dynamics
social
socially
estatal, hicieron un poco de anticipación.
and state, did some anticipation,
No debe preocuparnos,
and that should not worry us.
no debe preocuparnos,
It should not worry us,
porque lo que hace es que ayuda a que en la medida de la capacidad estatal
and what it does is it helps that the capacity of the states
se pueda empezar a poner en práctica
could begin to be put into practice
lo que se ha acordado.
what we have agreed on.
Concretamente,
Concretely,
la fecha elegida
the date that was selected
de entrada en vigor, que
that it would go into vigor or start,
es el 23 de marzo,
is the 23rd of March.
fue seleccionada para dar lugar a que
And it was selected in order to give way to
entre el 17 y el 20 de marzo
that between the 16th and 20th of March,
se pudieran articular los mecanismos concretos
we could articulate the movements concretely
de instalación de estas medidas,
of the installation of these measures,
dado que fue una medida planeada con antelación
given that it was a measure that was taken with anticipation
y no una medida emergente o una medida precipitada.
and not a measure that was emergent or unprecipitated.
Si algún estado ya tiene estos mecanismos en puerta
And if a state already has these mechanisms in action
y los puede implantar,
and they can implement them
muy bien.
very well.
Lo cierro diciendo una última cosa.
And I am going to close telling you one more thing.
Esta no va a ser una epidemia corta.
This will not be a short epidemic.
Ya lo hemos dicho, pero quiero volverlo a dejar muy en claro.
We
Hemos
have
dicho
said it
que
before,
la
but I want to make it very clear.
epidemia puede durar cuando menos
I want to tell you that the epidemic could last at the very least
12 semanas.
12 weeks,
que es lo que duró en China.
which is what it lasted in China.
Llegó a un punto máximo más o menos a la mitad de esas semanas
And it reached its maximum point at approximately the halfway point of those weeks.
y luego empezó a descender.
And then it began to descend.
No necesariamente por las medidas de contención extremas
Not necessarily because of the measures that were taken that were extreme for containment.
que se tomaron. Ya vendrán los estudios serológicos que
And the studies will come, serological studies, I guess, which is blood.
son los estudios en donde a una muestra representativa de la población
Oh, these are the measures where a sector of the population,
se le toma sangre
you take blood
y se analizan los anticuerpos
and you analyze the antibodies
para ver si desarrollaron defensas, desarrollaron inmunidad
to see if they develop defenses or immunities.
y se verá la enorme proporción, el
And you will see the enormous proportion
enorme porcentaje de personas
and the enormous percentage of people
que fueron infectadas
that were infected
a pesar de no haber tenido enfermedad.
even though they had no symptoms of the illness.
En algunos países,
And in some countries,
como Alemania,
like Germany,
el liderazgo político del Estado
the liberation politically of the state
comentó lo que
commented
es una realidad demostrable científicamente
what is a demonstrable scientific quantitative study
que se espera que hasta 7 de cada 10 personas
is that they expect that 7 out of every 10 people
desarrollen anticuerpos
will develop antibodies
en la medida en que han sido expuestos al virus.
when they have been exposed to the virus.
Pero no quiere decir
But this does not mean
que 7 de cada 10 van a tener la enfermedad y mucho menos
that 7 out of 10 will have the disease, and much less
que 7 de cada 10
that 7 out of
van
10
a tener una enfermedad
will have a disease
de cuidado,
that needs to be cared for,
una enfermedad delicada.
a delicate disease or infirmity.
Entonces ya vendrá el momento en que se esclarecerá cuál fue la fuerza principal que
And there will come a moment where it will become clear which was the force that controlled
permitió en el caso chino
or permitted, in the case of China,
el extinguir la epidemia. Pero
to extinguish the epidemic.
lo cierto es que se extinguió
But what is certain is it was extinguished in China,
o está en vías ya de salida
or it's on its way out,
y que duró aproximadamente 12 semanas,
and that it lasted approximately 12 weeks,
3 meses
about 3 months,
durante todo este pico inicial
during this whole initial peak
o proceso inicial.
or initial process.
Entonces, este sería el escenario mínimo de duración
So this would be the scene of initial duration
que esperamos en México.
that we expect in Mexico.
Sin embargo, en la medida que cada país
Nevertheless, the measure that every country, or the measures that every country
tiene distintas características,
has different characteristics,
podría extenderse más,
it could extend more.
podría haber pequeños repuntes
There could be small outbreaks
secundarios
which are secondary
que prolongaran la necesidad
that would prolong the necessity
de medidas de mitigación y control.
of mitigation and control.
Y si uno anticipa estas medidas demasiado temprano,
And if you anticipate these measures too early,
uno extingue o agota la capacidad de la sociedad
then you would extinguish or deplete the capacity of the society
de mantenerlas.
of maintaining them.
Y si bien las intervenciones en este momento tienen utilidad,
And if at these moments the interventions are actually useful,
posiblemente van a tener mayor utilidad
then possibly they will have even more utilization
después.
afterwards.
Entonces,
So therefore,
no podemos, no debemos
we should not and could not
actuando responsablemente,
act responsibly
agotar a la sociedad. Y
and deplete the society.
esta es una lección aprendida del mundo,
And this is a lesson we have learned from the world,
pero también de México en 2009,
but also of what occurred in Mexico in 2009,
cuando las distintas intervenciones
when the various different interventions
que se tomaron primero con una base técnica
that were taken at first with a technical base,
coordinada por el propio secretario de Salud de entonces,
which was coordinated by the security person at national level at that time,
con una base técnica,
with a technical basis.
después empezaron a implantar demasiado temprano
Then they started to implant much too early
porque permeó este estado de ansiedad
because they had this state of anxiety which permeated,
que afectó a los liderazgos políticos
which affected the political leaders.
y se anticiparon decisiones
And they anticipated decisions
que técnicamente no eran indispensables,
which were technically not indispensable.
obviamente en un contexto en donde también teníamos una epidemia que surgió en la región de Norteamérica
Obviously, where we had an epidemic which surged in North America,
y que por lo tanto había mayor incertidumbre sobre su curso.
and because of that, there was more uncertainty regarding its course.
No agotemos las intervenciones demasiado temprano,
So let's not deplete our interventions prematurely.
mantengamos la calma.
Let's maintain calm.
La calma no quiere decir desatendamos las circunstancias,
And to have calm does not mean inattention to the circumstances.
y enfoquémonos en
And let's focus on
lo que sirve,
what is useful,
que por el momento es las medidas de
that at the moment is the measures
higiene básica,
of basic hygiene,
lavarse las manos,
washing your hands,
cuidar el estornudo,
washing your hands, and guarding your cough
con la protección, el estornudo de etiqueta,
by coughing the basic cough into your elbow or AC, antecubital area,
o con un cubrebocas para las personas enfermas,
or to wear a face mask or face shield for those people that are showing symptoms or ill.
la recuperación efectiva, manteniéndonos en casa,
So the recovery is effective staying at home.
todos y todas aquellas personas que pudieran tener síntomas,
All of those people that could possibly have symptoms.
no se necesita confirmar el coronavirus
You do not need to confirm the coronavirus
para decidir quedarse en casa.
to decide to stay home.
Quien tenga fiebre, tos, dolor de garganta,
For those that have fever, cough, or sore throat,
estornudos, etc.
or sneezing, etc.
Y estas son las medidas básicas.
And these are the basic measures.
Y segundo, las que anunciamos el fin de semana,
And the second part, which we announced on the weekend,
suspensión temporal de todas las actividades no esenciales,
suspension temporarily of all activities that are non-essential,
que son aquellas que no afectan al funcionamiento de las distintas organizaciones,
which are those that do not affect the functioning of those organizations,
gubernamentales, sociales
government, social,
o privadas.
or private.
Tercero,
Third of all,
no acudir a eventos de concentración masiva
and do not attend events that have a high concentration or massive concentration,
que se ha puesto el punto de corte en 5,000 o más personas,
which has been set at a point of no more than 5,000 people,
y mantenerse informadas e informados,
and to keep informed,
confiando, respetando,
having confidence and respectful,
escuchando,
listening,
analizando
analyzing
la información fundamentada
the information that was founded,
y no propagando rumores
and not propagating rumors
que solamente crean estas espirales
that only create these spirals
de desinformación, de confusión
of misinformation and confusion
que tanto nos afectan, a veces quizá más
that affect us so much, and at times even more
que el propio virus.
than the virus itself.
Presidente.
And now he gives away to the president. I just thought this was so, wow, so great. I think I'm going to cut this virus video in two parts again. And the reason is because I think that it is probably too long for people to handle all the information all at once. I think that I'm going to cut it in half. So I'm going to stop it here, and then I'm going to resume the recording from this point. So we're at 50:41. So there's 2.5 hours of this. So I might have to break it up into 3 pieces. But anyway, we're going to stop it right here for now. And that way I can have a basic foundation of what the health expert has said for us to do in order to stay healthy and to diminish the sense of anxiety and fear that society has gotten. And also to stop panic, like Beatriz says on the notes. She says to stop the panic in our populations. Thank you very much. So we're going to stop this video here for the moment, and I'll resume it on part 2. But before I do that, I need to check one thing so that I can have the video have part 1 on it. So let me see, where is that here? Let me see. I don't know what I did, but I do not show it. Okay. Okay, so this is part 1.